Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Abitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security-oriented policies to guide the state of Israel. We are a movement of more than 20,000 people, including many reserve officers and operators from all branches of the Israel Defense establishment. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing and our previous briefings, so that we can really bring you behind the headlines of what is happening here in Israel. Today's briefing is very special. We have many viewers who are always sending in questions, emails, calling me up and asking how they can be more active and supportive of both our movement and, of course, the state of Israel. What can they do to really fight in this war that Israel finds itself? So we're going to try to speak a little bit about that today. And I have two very special guests. Our first guest is Ido Daniel, who is the Senior Director of Digital Strategy for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel. And he, of course, is going to speak about his work in digital strategy and how to fight online, so to speak. And then we're going to go to Eli Piepsh, who is the director of IDSF International Affairs, to focus on one of the most important issues of this week, which is really the funding for Israel in the US House and Senate, and how we can then merge these two ideas together of what our followers, our viewers can do in order to really fight for Israel online and locally. So we'll begin, of course, right now with Ido. And Ido, I see you're in the car. You're coming from the Shlosha. Maybe you can share a little bit about that before we go into the main topic.
Yeah. Thank you, Moshe, and hi, everybody. My name is Ido. I'm a Senior Director for Digital Strategy at the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs and Combating Anti-Semitism, by the way. I was formerly at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel. I'm sorry being on the go, and actually at the cemeteries, the military cemetery's parking lot. Today was the Shloshim, the memorial of 30 days of my fallen cousin, Ori Jerbi, Zichro Livracha. He was a Sayeret Givati. He fell in Khan Yunis in combat. We just finished, family and friends, the memorial, and we're going to shul, we're going to synagogue on our way. Every time I speak with crowd, I always mention him. We're very proud that Ori wanted and told his parents before he passed, during combat, by the way, that if something bad will happen, he wanted them to donate his organs, and they did. And two little children are alive today because of Ori's organ donation. And today in the ceremony, they put the EDI Association, which is our society for organ donors, the logo on his grave, on his gravestone. So guess from all of that is happening and the difficult times, we find a lot of comfort, and the family finds a lot of comfort in this. So thank you, and thank you. I see the messages. Thank you so much for this. I will say that on a personal note, the past 4 months and since October 7th were the toughest times of my life, where my work is entwined with my personal life, and I believe that many people in Israel feel the same. Of course, in Israel and also in the diaspora and other people around the world who relate to Israel, because the amount of, first of all, I do digital strategy, I do content, I do advocacy for Israel. I help other people to do the same. And we haven't seen anything like that before. Not in every war, not in every Gaza operation. When the war started, I immediately realized that this is something that we haven't seen before. And I made a few choices. The first one was that the realization that my decision, realization that I cannot win it all. This is very important. Strategically, I cannot win it all. So I asked myself, where is the toughest place and where we can contribute to this gigantic warfare of online fight? And I made a few decisions. The first one is to grab all of our connections with civil society, with influencers, with people who all we know of and have large audiences abroad here in Israel. And I made myself their platform to continue to do their work and to provide them access. Because by the end of the day, what is the government's role in advocacy, in public diplomacy, in Hasbara? It's, I believe, our ability to provide access and provide content in messaging, of course, but also to provide opportunities for others to do, because I'm government. You all know my messaging, you all know my talking points. My voice doesn't matter. What matters is what other people think, the front that is the civilian front. And nonprofit, civil society, influencers, we all gathered them. And ever since, we created the platform for them to continue and do what they do best. The second decision was to go where it's tough, I told you. And that was Instagram and TikTok. And I went to all of those who create content with large audiences abroad. I'm talking 80 plus million followers combined around the world, and provided them with the best I could to continue do what they do. I brought hundreds of them, including from outside Israel, but also from Israel, to the south, to the kibbutzim, the communities. We were the first ones there. I remember that the head of the government press office called me and said, how can you go into Be'eri, Kibbutz Be'eri, and Kibbutz Kfar Aza, where international reporters can't? And I told them, because this work is much more important, in my opinion. We need to do both. But when I'm in charge of the digital strategy and I'm thinking of how people consume and the younger generation consume their news today, and how do they consume their Israel-related, Middle East-related news, I knew we should be there. And I need to bring the voices of Israelis who are well-known abroad. That includes our most famous singers abroad, to bring them there and to get them to share their experience. Because it's all about your experience when it comes to social media. It's all about your own voice. And this work continues up until this day. The second thing that we provided is financial support. We had two programs. One is grants, and one is a matching program that is still running. We allocated in a sum of, I believe it's 20 plus million shekels for nonprofits, for advertising companies to submit us applications for campaigns. Many of them did. Most of what you see, I think, from influencers, sometimes from media companies and then advertising companies are with no logo, probably came from us or by our support. This is how we wanted to continue to allow them to continue their work. On the ministry and the state level, the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs took upon itself to bring the voices of the families of the hostages and those who were murdered. We made, up until now, almost 15 or 16 delegations of families of hostages who are still held captive in Gaza, or those who survived the October 7th massacre. They went all over the place. They've met with governors, they've met with senators, congressmen and women, they've met with heads of state, of course, in the United States, in Canada, in Latin America, in Japan, all over the place. And every single delegation that we've made with the families went and had very important meetings in the call to bring them home, but also a lot of interviews for media, a lot of social media and digital activity all around it. So this is when we thought, what is our strength in contributing to this entire mechanism? This is what the ministry did, Ministry of Diaspora Affairs, and this is my personal duty as the person who's heading the digital operations to help them. I will say one more thing because I think it's worth mentioning, because when October 7th war started, there was another war started. And it's the war of the big platforms, the big social media platforms against the pro-Israel voices out there. And last week, there was a delegation of 2 seniors from TikTok International coming to Israel. We've met with them. And they know why they came here, because at the beginning of, I think it was October 8th or 9th, I spoke with both representatives of these companies, and I told them very clearly, we as government will have zero tolerance for silencing voices of Israelis on your platforms. While Palestinians will continue celebrating the massacre and not being held accountable on their pages, you guys are silencing voices of Israelis, of pro-Israel voices in Israel and abroad and outside of Israel. We see that, and we will have zero tolerance for that. This was kind of helpful, and we created a mechanism to allow Israelis to still continue raising their voices on social media. It was tough. It's still sometimes a problem, but we managed to create some kind of mechanism with the big platforms to continue and allow people to raise their voices and share their emotions and voices when it comes to what happens in Israel. So delegations, funds, creating this platform of continuing the conversation. This is what I saw on October 7th that should be my duty. Of course, we did some other stuff as well. We're running ads on Google and YouTube with very specific targeted audiences all over the world. We had one of the Super Bowl commercials was one of ours in the streaming, in some of the streaming services. Whenever someone came to us and said, we have a problem in this part for this situation or this arena, we didn't. I can give you an example. One of our Olympic medalists, Sagi Muki, approached me and he told me, "Do, I can't reach my audience, my judo fans. They do not know what is happening in Israel. I'm having trouble in bringing them our voices and make them understand." It was before the first hostage swap, and we created a video for him when he's going up to the mat of judo, and instead of the kids he's teaching on his daily basis, there were photos of the children who were still held captive by Hamas. He received hundreds of messages, of supportive messages from judo athletes from all over the world. Many of them, by the way, were Iranians that supported his message. So another layer that I'm bringing and adding here to the table, a layer of work, is bridging the gap when it comes to social media, understanding what is missing in different areas, and then fill the gap with content, with social media activity, and so on. This is I think my initial thoughts on this. Are we opening it up for questions, or?
This is fantastic. What I'd like to do now, with your permission, is have Eli Piep speak about this issue right now in the US with funding for Israel. I want you to listen in on this. And after Eli shares all of this, tell us what your professional recommendation would be for how to frame this, how to present these issues on social media. So Eli, please, what can you share with us about what's happening?
I'll be sharing some links to our accounts and my account if people want to follow as well.
Excellent.
Comments.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Moshe, and thank you very much, Ido. I really appreciated what you had to say, and I'm really hopeful that there are great opportunities for our supporters and followers to be able to engage. And with your advice, I'm sure people will be able to. As you were saying, this week has been every week in a war. It's always there's always things going on, and it's always somewhat dramatic. This week, the week began with discussions and I won't say controversy, but certainly in the U.S. and in the Congress, there were efforts to provide Israel with funding that Israel does need, really desperately does need, not today, but for the war, which we expect to continue going on for a while. And that funding is necessary, is something that Israel desperately wants and desperately needs. And has not gone through quite yet. Usually when Israel needs funding, when it comes from a military perspective or from defensive purposes, there really isn't much of a fight. It is something that is usually accepted and is something that goes through without too much controversy. Now, the situation is a little bit difficult, as you can imagine. Everything in DC is quite partisan. And we have a situation where there are concerns both on the Republican side and on the Democratic side when it comes to funding. So let me see if I can break it down for you. On the Republican side, obviously there's a lot of support for Israel in general. And the support for funding generally goes through with Israel. There are two arguments that have a significant sway on Capitol Hill right now amongst Republicans. One is that Israel should get funding. However, that funding costs money, and the government has already spent way too much money, and therefore there should be something should be cut in order to compensate. And the money that we're talking about for Israel is in the neighborhood of $14 billion. So therefore, we should find something in the neighborhood of about $14 billion that should be cut from the federal budget. Initially, the Republicans found some funding related to the IRS, obviously a very positive and popular target for the cutting of funding. But anytime you have something like that, anytime you have an issue that relates to funding, there's something called the CBO, and the Congressional Budget Office has to score it and has to define how much funding would be added or would be cut over the course of 10 years. They're somewhat independent, and they ruled that actually cutting funds from the IRS would end up actually not saving money, but would cost money, because many people wouldn't have to pay their taxes or things of that sort. So that kind of backfired, and then the Republicans, who felt very strongly about the need to cut some funds to allow for there to be funds going to Israel, ended up without an attractive target to cut. Then there was another concern, which is there is interest in supporting Israel, but there is another very significant national security interest in the U.S. that Republicans are particularly sensitive to, which is the border with Mexico. And that therefore, if there was going to be funding going to Israel, there was a sense to an ally, a strong ally, something that most Republicans felt very strongly about. I would say just about all Republicans felt very strongly about. There was also a sense that we can't be giving money to an ally without actually taking care of our own national security interests, our own meaning the United States' own national security interests, which means securing the border. And there was a sense that providing additional funds for the U.S. For the border with Mexico would be something that would be necessary and would help to get Republicans involved, and would be something that Democrats had been hesitant to support, and that connecting it together with the aid to Israel would allow the Democrats to support that funding. On the flip side, on the Democratic side, support for the war has been decreasing quite significantly. There still are many Democrats who are supportive, but it is becoming usually with some asterisks, with some conditions, and the budget is something that's quite similar. And as a result, for the Democrats, they want to combine all funding for all allies, so Israel, Ukraine, and for Taiwan. So that ended up being a much more significant funding. Most Republicans at this point are not supportive of giving additional funds to Ukraine. So connecting Israeli funding together with the rest was something that for the Republicans were not a non-starter. The reason why it's even more significant that there is a difference between Republicans and Democrats is that the Democrats control the Senate, the Republicans control the House. They need to agree when you pass a bill. A bill has to go through both the House and the Senate, and then in order for it to get to the president. And therefore, we are at a little bit of a standstill where the funding has not come through, and it is absolutely funding that Israel needs and requires. I do want to make sure I leave time for Ido to come back on, but it needs to be said that with all of this, there also needs to be understood that the Biden administration has been planning and really has leaked out some significant pressure on Israel to embrace and to accept a Palestinian state in the very, very near future. And this definitely is something that has been in the works for quite some time. It's something that is definitely seen by IDSF as a fundamental threat to Israel's existence, to not only create a Palestinian state at this time, but the message that it sends to Iran and frankly any other bad actor in the world is that you could conduct an October 7th, and after a few months, you will actually get the exact political result that you wanted and that you failed to achieve for 75 years, and you will now be able to achieve it by executing an October 7th-like event. That is an absolutely horrific message for any international evil actor, for any terrorist organization to hear that is how the West is going to react. But unfortunately, that is exactly what we are going to be facing right now. And then when you understand that this has been in the works, you also understand the funding situation, because as much as this is an issue that's controlled by Congress, generally independent of the White House and of the executive, the reality is that certainly the executive, which is the administration, has tremendous influence, certainly on the Democrats in the Senate, and so far the inability to be able to come to an agreement to provide Israel with the funds that will allow it not just to finish in Gaza, but really to protect Israel in a potential and a very likely expansion of the war up north is something that is a real significant concern. And as the U.S. is pushing Israel in a very strong diplomatic way that the current in Israel is 100% against, we understand that this is going to be used in part of the leverage to try to get the House and the Senate to agree on a bill that will provide Israel with this really necessary funding. So it is quite it is definitely a very difficult situation. It is funding that is needed. But it also is necessary for Israel to stand up and to be strong and allow Israel to fully execute its war goals, which is fully dismantling and destroying Hamas and returning the hostages. And none of that can be done if we don't continue with the war, as General Vivi has been saying over the last few days, continuing the war as necessary into Rafah, not agreeing to an early or premature ceasefire, and only agreeing to a hostage, freeing of hostages or some sort of deal that really allows Israel to continue to execute the war as we need. I am not leaving much time for Ido, but I think that this overall idea that the trying to create right now the need to establish a Palestinian state right now is a threat to the state of Israel. And I think that there is a role for our supporters in the States to be presenting that message very clearly and substantially, in social media and in other places, and certainly calling your congressman.
Eli, thank you so much. Ido, we only have a few minutes left, not much time at all. Eli, that was fantastic. Ido, having heard everything Eli just said, our viewers who are going to leave this call and jump onto their social media accounts to present all or any parts of what Eli just presented, what would you recommend? How would you suggest they frame it? What should they focus on?
I can tell you that we are, it's sometimes unbelievable. And these are voices that I hear from the US, and this is something that I told with Minister Amichai Shikli, Minister of Diaspora Affairs, to the people of TikTok International just a few days ago. TikTok boasts in their education, they seem as entertainment and education platform. But what I hear from TikTok, especially on their live feeds, is people, if you go on your live feed on TikTok, and these are mostly Americans who support Hamas, and I told them this, you go on their lives and you see people with the profile picture of Abu Obeida, which is the Hamas spokesperson, and you hear what people are saying, that nothing happened on October 7th. And if it happened, IDF committed those atrocities. And there were no rapings of women. And if they were, the Israeli women who were raped enjoyed being raped by Palestinians and by Hamas. This is what the youth in America are hearing on TikTok live feeds. And I told them that, as far as I know, Hamas is a designated terrorist organization, not because Israel said so, it's because the United States said so. And if Hamas supporters are feeling comfortable and have their profile photos and their logos on their platform of El Qassam Brigades or their spokesperson, I believe it's supporting terrorism, and they were pretty shook about it. Every single person, our fight on this is to continue sharing our message, continue sharing what happened on October 7th. Why Israel is there in the first place? Why Israel is in Gaza? Why we are sending our soldiers, including my cousin, God rest his soul, to Gaza to fight for what? Because of what? Because of what happened on October 7th. And the message is very clear. The war can be over tomorrow morning if Hamas will surrender and give back the hostages. It's as simple as that. It's not vengeance, it's not revenge, it's not anything like that. It's a simple answer to what happened on October 7th. And Hamas will be dismantled and will be surrendering. We will surrender and give back the hostages. They can do it before that. They just need to load the weapons, give it back, and bring back the hostages. And this is the message should be echoing when it comes to those questions. What is happening in Gaza? Why Israel is in Gaza? The humanitarian crisis in Gaza. I went to the Erez crossing a few weeks ago. The Erez crossing is a good answer for why there is a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Because the Erez crossing served as a border crossing for people in Gaza, for Palestinians, to go for their day jobs every day. They had work permits. They used to go to the work, their day jobs every day, and provide their families. Go in the morning and be back in the afternoon. Thousands of Palestinians in Gaza. What Hamas did on October 7th was destroying completely the Erez crossing, which was a humanitarian and provided work livelihood for people. And for what? To use its road for their terrorist pickup trucks, to murder elderly and children, and rape 16-year-old women in Israel. For those of you who are being asked about humanitarian crisis in Gaza, why did Hamas destroy the Erez crossing? It will never come back, by the way. It's completely destroyed. The international community put millions in building this place. The state of Israel did. And for what? This is the answer for why Israel is in Gaza and why we went to this war, this just war in the first place.
Ido, thank you so much. So what I'm hearing loud and clear from you is the effective media on social, the effective strategy, I should say, on social media is not to get bogged down in all of these partisan politics in the US and should there be funding and should there not, but more of an appeal to emotion and to really focus on October 7th. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to Eli Pieps. Thank you to Ido Daniel for joining us today and sharing all of that with us. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning in. We will be back with you on Monday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.